What's up, YouTube? It is me, Topher Crost, here to do a deck profile for you. That's right, I finally got my Dark Magician Link deck profile done. And basically this deck has been very, very successful for me. I've won 9 out of the 10 matches that I've played so far. I haven't won every game and every match, but I have won 9 out of the 10 matches I've played so far against some really competitive players. So I'm very, very, very happy with this deck. It took a lot of making. It's why I'm getting it out so late, trying to figure it out. And if you've noticed, I don't have my normal yellow mat under my cards. I got a link mat, so I'm going to use that one for the deck profile today, so you guys can see that. It looks all nice and pretty and stuff, so I got my new link mat. And one more thing, before I get started on this deck profile, I just wanted to say that if you haven't seen my video that I made a few days ago, I am accepting subscriber deck profiles so that I can do a deck profile on it and test it and maybe rate the deck and stuff like that. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do it yet, so if you want to learn how to do that, click the video link in the description. And without further ado, let's begin. All right. So first, I'm going to get the deck out of the way. We are going to do the monsters. And first up, we have Dark Magician. I'm going to try to get all the cards in here. I've been working on new camera angles because I don't like the whole 3-card thing in one shot. But anyway, first we're going to go with triple Dark Magician. Obviously, the resource in the deck, you want to go with 3 of him. Next up, you are going to go 3 Apprentice Illusion Magician. Very, very, very good card for getting Dark Magician in your hand. Getting Dark Magician in your hand is extremely important in the deck, and it also works as an honest. You don't always have to play it out of your hand. I've learned typically if you have her and Pot of Duality in your first hand, you want to play Pot of Duality and keep her and use her as an honest, or maybe next turn if you still don't have a Dark Magician in your hand. But very, very, very good card. Allows you to boost your spellcaster's attacks. Next up, we have Magician of Dark Illusion. It's again a wonderful card that also counts as a Dark Magician while it's on the field. Also, it can reborn a Dark Magician if you play a spell or trap, and can be summoned from your hand if you activate spell or traps on your opponent's turn, which you will do all the time in this deck because it is a Dark Magician deck, and that's what it is. Like I said, it also counts as a Dark Magician, and the reason I'm playing it at 2 is if I played it at 3, it always bulks. I always end up with too many in my hand, or one in my hand that I don't need, and it could have been another card. Typically, I like to pull Magician of Dark Illusion out with Magician's Navigation, so that's when I really need them. Next up is 3 Magician's Rods. I'm trying to get that in there all nice. Very great card. Very important that you play this in the deck at 3. It allows you to search your Dark Magician spell and traps right out of your deck, which is extremely important. It makes the game very consistent. And if you don't have any Dark Magicians in your hand, you can just pull out a Illusion Magic and get 2 Dark Magicians into your hand. And it also, that'll pull 2 cards out of your deck, so that way you have less of a chance of drawing into a Dark Magician and getting bricked. A lot of ways you can use Magician's Rod, but you always want to play 3, and it's recyclable if you activate a spell or trap on your opponent's turn. And next up, a card that I never thought I was going to use in this deck, but have been putting in there recently, Max C. Now, I find it weird that I put Max C in when the format got slower, but I'm realizing that when people have to rely a lot on their main decks, and with Link monsters, they're actually summoning extra monsters to get their, XYZ and extra Synchro plays out, so I put Max C in, and it's been very, very, very helpful. But obviously, you know what it does. Every time your opponent special summons a monster, you can send Max C from your hand. Every time your opponent special summons a monster, you can draw a card. So that's pretty much it for the monsters. It's actually a pretty standard thing for Dark Magician decks. Some other cards I've been trying are Effect Veiler, which is a great card also if you would like to try it. But anyway, let's get into the spell cards. First, we're going to do the Dark Magician spell cards that I have in this deck, and starting it off is obviously going to be Dark Magical Circle, banish for Dark Magicians, and it lets you search the top 3 cards from your deck, and excavate them, and if one of them is a Dark Magician card, you get to put it in your hand. And it's not technically an excavate because you don't have to show it to your opponent, except the Dark Magician card that you put in your hand, but yeah, it's very good to get. With as many Dark Magician cards as you play in this deck, including Dark Magician, you will always manage to. It's very, very, very useful to have, and not to mention every time you special summon Dark Magician at least once per turn, you can banish. Next up is Dark Magic Inheritance. I played it too because I like to see it. It's basically a second Magician's Rod for the deck. The reason most people will typically keep it at 0 or 1 is because it does have a cost that you have to banish 2 spell cards, but with this deck I've never had a problem with having spell cards in my graveyard. So I've run it at 2. It's a quick play, very, very good card to run, and it keeps the deck very consistent because you can search Dark Magician, Spell, and Traps, which you need to do, especially at the beginning of the game. And with the draw power that I have in this deck, it is very unlikely that I will not have 2 spell cards when I need them. Next up, Illusion Magic. This is that card I was talking about with Magician's Rod earlier. Basically a good search card. Get 2 Dark Magicians into your hand, so that way you don't have to worry about pulling them from the deck. Basically, a 4th Apprentice Illusion Magician for her effect, except it gets you 2 Dark Magicians, which is very good. And all you have to do is tribute a spellcaster type. My recommendation is, if you can, tribute Rod, so that way you can bring Rod back to your hand and play it again to get another Dark Magician spell or trap card. Last, for the Dark Magician spell cards, we have Dark Magic Attack. You can pretty much search it in this deck whenever you need it, and it gets rid of your opponent's entire back row, so it's very, very good. I recommend, if you can, if you already have a Dark Magician on the field, use it before you even start your turn, so that way they can't negate anything. And if they are going to play a trap card, they do it before you start making your plays. Always play it at the beginning of the turn. At least that's what I have found works the best. Next, getting into the other spell cards, Forbidden Chalice. I play Forbidden Chalice. Some people prefer Solemn Strike. I do not play Solemn Strike in this deck. I prefer Forbidden Chalice, because not only can it give me an attack boost, since the Dark Magicians are kind of in a weird attack range where they can't beat a lot of boss monsters due to their attack, but it also can negate the effects of my opponent's monsters on their turn, and it counts as a magic card, or excuse me, a spell card for my Dark Magic Inheritance. So all reasons I play Forbidden Chalice over the trap card, and you don't have to lose life points. Next up is Twin Twisters. Twin Twisters is pretty much in this deck for one reason, and one reason only, and that's if they can prevent you for any reason from playing trap cards with in your deck, which is essential for you because you have to play trap cards to get your Dark Magicians out for the most part. So run Twin Twisters. It is also a good card at the beginning of the game to pull and just get rid of a couple of your opponent's spell and traps. Alright, next we are getting into the last bit of the spell cards before we get to the draw power, and I'm putting all 3 of these down at the same. I play 1 Regeki and, let me try to fix this up a little bit. 1 Regeki and 2 Dark Holes. The only reason I'm playing 2 Dark Holes is because I can only play 1 Regeki. Dark Hole also comes in handy getting your Dark Magicians in the graveyard so you can recycle them. But always play it typically before you play your Dark Magicians. Regeki, if I could run it at 3, I would. I think most of us would. But since you can't, put 2 Dark Holes in there instead. And if you're asking why I'm running Dark Hole instead of a card like a Mirror Force card, in this format, your opponent's always more worried about building, at least in the duels that I've played, your opponent's always more worried about building their board than negating yours for the most part. So especially if you go turn 2, and you draw Regeki or Dark Hole, it wipes their board and it gives you a really strong start. I would recommend playing it over the Mirror Force cards because the Mirror Force cards have not come in handy for me too much when it comes to the new format. Alright, and now, since I'm running out of room, I'm going to move these and start with the draw power in the deck. So let me go ahead and throw that out. Obviously you've seen Max C, but this is the draw power spells. First up, Allure of Darkness, a must-play in Dark Magician decks. So you can play it 2 or 3. I played it 3 because I have lots of extra dark monsters that I typically won't play. Like there'll be an extra Apprentice Illusion Magician or something like that. So run 3. And this next card, I honestly would recommend running 2 to 3. But I'm running 3 Pot of Duality. My only problem with Pot of Duality is you cannot special summon on the first turn, which is okay. But, because most of your special summoning is going to happen on your opponent's turn, but the only thing it really conflicts with in the deck is Apprentice Illusion Magician. But it all depends on your hand. Use it at your best discretion. If you already have all the Dark Magician cards you need in your hand, and your opponent doesn't have anything, your opponent doesn't have anything negated to summon, go ahead and throw that Pot of Duality in the graveyard and special summon that Apprentice Illusion Magician. But besides that moment, you would probably want to use the Pot of Duality. Very good card to get in your opening hand. And lastly, we have Upstart Goblin. basically turning this deck into a 39 card deck, which is just, you know, something to make it a little more consistent. That's all Upstart Goblin is in really any deck. I'd probably play it at 3 if I could. That's it for the draw power, and now we get into the trap cards. First up, 3. Magician Navigation. Basically what that allows you to do is pull out a Dark Magician and then from your hand, and then pull another spellcaster from your deck. And it also lets you negate once it's been in the graveyard for a turn, which is extremely important in this deck. You have to negate a lot, because a lot of people will try to destroy your strategies, and Dark Magician is not a high attack point monster, so you want to prevent your opponents from, you know, summoning those monsters that can destroy your Eternal Souls or destroy your Dark Magicians, you know, really high attack powered monsters. So as long as Dark Magician, or as you have a Dark Magician on the field, you can negate with Magician Navigation. I always recommend running it at 3, and if people that run it at 2, they always say, well, you know, it bricks me, I get 2, and only have 1 Dark Magician in your hand. My recommendation is with Twin Twisters and Apprentice Illusion Magician in the deck, discard 1 to your graveyard, so that when you get a Dark Magician out next turn, you have 1 ready to negate. That is my strategy for it if I ever get bricked with them, which I never do with Magician Navigation all that much. And next up, I'm running Eternal Soul at 3, once again. Basically makes it so your Dark Magicians are not affected by your opponent's spell cards. This means you can Dark Hole your own Dark Magician, but it lets you recycle them. Also, you can bring a Dark Magician from your hand or graveyard to the field once per turn, and or you could search that Dark Magic attack from your deck, just another card that can search it. So I always recommend running at 3 because you want to have at least 2 out of the 3 Magician's Navigation, Eternal Soul, and Dark Magical Circle in your hand, simply because that way you only have to search out 1 other card, and you can work on getting some other cards in the deck ready, like Dark Hole and stuff like that, you know, searching those kind of things. But even if you don't have 2 of them in your beginning hand, it's pretty easy to get 2 in your hand with this deck. Next, we have Starlight Road. Very good. Negates the effect of your Eternal Soul if you get it sent to the graveyard. But if somebody's going to destroy 2 or more of your cards, it's also very good against Twin Twister. You can special summon Stardust Dragon straight from your deck, or extra deck, onto the field, which is another card that can, you know, repel, destroy. Now, in this new format, you have to watch out. You don't have to summon Stardust Dragon. I'm sorry, I keep calling it Starlight Dragon. Stardust Dragon, but you can, and just remember, with this new format, you only have 1 extra monster zone unless you have links, so summon it, you know, carefully. The good thing about this deck is that it basically runs off of the main deck mostly. It very rarely goes out into the extra deck, which is kind of the whole point of this deck, is you don't want to really rely on your extra deck too much, and I very rarely rely on my extra deck. Most games I don't even use it, except for maybe Ebon Illusion Magician, or Ebon High Magician, but even then, very, very rarely. So, and last but not least, Solemn Warning. Run 1 in your deck. I would run more if I could, but you can't. You gotta run 1, but it's a good negate prevent your opponent from getting out those, you know, early plays that could potentially take you down, or, you know, maybe some late game plays. I don't think I've ever had a late game, but definitely be good for that. Basically, it'll negate your opponent's special summoning of a monster, which is, you know, very, very important in this format, considering, you know, you could theoretically negate their link monsters. I can't think of a way out of it that you couldn't negate, but, you know, I say theoretically because there always is that way around it that I don't remember. And excuse me if I'm talking, kind of rambling a little bit. I'm exhausted. I was going to get this deck profile out to you guys next Wednesday instead of tonight, but I figured you guys have been waiting long enough. Anyway, now we're going on to the extra deck. First up, we're going to do our link monsters. Decode Talker. Basically, the only point of having him in this deck is if you think you're going to be playing more than 1 monster from your extra deck, he opens up some zones for you, and he can negate some effects if your opponent decides to target. And if he goes to negate something, or like, for instance, destroy one of your monsters, you can send Dark Magician. If a Dark Magician is attached to Decode Talker, you can send Dark Magician to the graveyard and then just straight up reborn it with Eternal Soul, so that's a very good strategy. Next, I play 2 Link Spiders, and basically what that does is you sack a normal monster, and you can pull Link Spider out, and that's the only effect I use them for. Basically, it's to get Dark Magician, to be able to cycle Dark Magician if you only have 1. with Eternal Souls. So you pop Link Spider, Dark Magician goes to graveyard. On your opponent's next turn, you can destroy something with Dark Magical Circle. So next, we are going to get into the XYZs in the deck. First up, I'm going to be running Ebon High Magician, or Ebon Illusion Magician. I always get them confused. Ebon Illusion Magician at 3. You can run it at 2. It probably won't hurt anything because you very rarely will actually use them. Or any extra deck monsters. But basically what he'll let you do is 2 level 7 spellcaster type monsters, or you can sacrifice one of the monster, or overlay one of the monsters that I have in this deck that I will show you in a minute. And it'll let you get a Dark Magician, or a normal spellcaster type monster, but Dark Magician from your deck and play it on the field. Very good if you are having a hard time getting some Dark Magicians on the field. Next up, we are running 2 Big Eye. Basically, mind control, or change of heart for your Dark Magician deck. Can take control of opponent's monster permanently, but cannot attack the turn it does it. But if your opponent has that big monster you just can't seem to get around, there you go. Next, Red Eyes Flare Metal Dragon at 2. I've been noticing I'm actually using it less, so I might switch Big Eye up to 3 and Red Eyes down to 1. But I know the second I do, I'm going to need 2 Metal Flares. And basically what that does, and I'm saying basically a lot, so I apologize, but what it does is every time your opponent activates any card effect that pretty much does anything, they will lose 500 life points. And it cannot be destroyed by card effects, so they'd have to actually fight it to beat it. But if you know he's about to be special summoning a lot the next turn, go ahead and affect monsters. He's special summon a lot. Go ahead and throw this guy out, especially if he only has like 1,000 life points left. So it limits what he can do the next turn. So play him. He's a good card, especially for an end game. Next up, Ebon High Magician. I've actually been using him a little bit more. Oops, excuse me, I just slammed the camera. I've actually been using him a little bit more than I used to because in this format I typically have Solemn Warning in my hand, and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna wait, and then I'll take. And when my opponent, basically, what he lets you do is, sorry, let me explain. He lets you activate quick play spells and trap cards from your hand, and people feel like they're safe and they're going to special summon that one monster, and I don't have anything on the field, and I'll Solemn Warning from my hand with them. So if you play me now, you can see it coming, but this is very good strategy to use against your opponents. Next, we are getting into the the rank 6 XYZs. Photon Strike Bouncer will be the first one. Negates monster effects, and if you do negate the effect, your opponent loses 1,000 life points. Basically good for negating monster effects if your opponent's playing lots of monsters. And then I play 2 Naruto, the Moral Leader. I know I almost say Naruto every time, but Naruto, the Moral Leader, which is the same thing except it negates magic card effects and can be overlaid into Ebon Illusion Magician. So another good card. Basically will only ever get out with Apprentice Illusion Magician, but still is a good card to have. I end up using it a lot more than I think I do, because if you get a hand with double Apprentice Illusion Magician in it, it's pretty bad unless you have some good level 6 XYZs in it, in your extra deck. And take these off. Last but not least, a card that I thought I was going to take out of my deck but ended up keeping, Stardust Dragon. Only ever going to be pulled out if you're using Starlight Road, but is still a great card nonetheless. You can keep your monsters from getting destroyed, so definitely a good card to have. You don't have much to say, everybody knows what Stardust Dragon does, so. But that is it for my deck. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And like I said, if I sound a little rambly or stuff in the video, or I do apologize. I am exhausted. I haven't had a day off in a very long time, so my apologies there. And I hope you guys enjoyed. And remember, like I said, I am taking deck profile submissions that I may make a video about. And to learn how to do that, please go into the description and find out what you need to do. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have yourselves a nice day. Topher Crost out.